Read the law. That shout came from the conference room of the district attorney's office as some fairly new prosecutors were preparing a case for trial. The source of the shout was Bill Crabtree, Deputy Attorney General for Knox County. All of the lawyers in the office understood that Bill knew the law, rules of evidence, and criminal procedure probably better than anyone they had ever met. He could be intimidating at times as he pushed the new hires and the old heads to be better lawyers. He explained how you had to prepare, how you had to know the law and procedure better than your opponent in court. He never let up on this mission, including scolding me on occasion because I had missed some pertinent cases doing my research. When he announced that he was ready for trial, he meant it. Bill was a night clerk at a motel in Loudoun County while in law school. The motel was robbed at gunpoint, and Bill was forced into the trunk of the robber's car and was later released unharmed, although terrified. The fact that he was a victim of crime made him a better prosecutor with a deeper understanding of the process. Bill was the go-to guy in the District Attorney General's conference when we needed proposed legislation or rule changes. He was a master at his craft, and he has taught and trained prosecutors throughout Tennessee in particular and the nation in general. Tough as nails sometimes, but he was a kind, a gentle, and a caring man at all times. He loved his family, and with a gleam in his eyes would talk about the kids, the grandkids, and Susan. Bill was an ethical trial lawyer, and his work will endure for years to come. For a little over 22 years, I never made a critical decision regarding a case without talking to Bill. I wanted and needed his advice, and he could change my mind when it became clear that I had not considered a particular fact. His service to this community will be deeply and sadly missed.
Good afternoon. I'm David Long, and I'm honored to provide remarks about and memories of my good friend, my law partner for over 20 years, and my first cousin, Lewis Crossley. Having known Lewis my entire life before his passing on October 24th, 2019, my memories of Lewis are large and colorful. Lewis and I parked cars at UT football games in the late 60s for 50 cents an hour. We listened to the Young Rascals driving on Gay Street in Lewis's MG convertible. We laughed at Durwood Jones and his animated lectures and tax courses at the Tennessee College of Law. We drank beers on the beach at St. Simon's Island, and we analyzed facts of cases and transactions and our law practice for over 20 years together. Throughout all of our activities was a real common thread. Lewis Crossley was genuine, he was a straight shooter, and a man who was opinionated on most issues, but respectful of those who did not share his viewpoints. Lewis could agree to disagree, civilly and gracefully. Lewis was truly a lawyer's lawyer. One of his many roles at Long, Ragsdale and Waters was being the unofficial chairman of matters involving ethical considerations. Lewis used common sense judgment in analyzing complicated issues, dealing with how to ethically practice law in an aggressive and effective manner. That ability of Lewis was instrumental in the growth and success of our law firm. I speak for all the lawyers at Long, Ragsdale and Waters. We miss Lewis's wit, we miss his legal prowess, and we miss his friendship. Lewis Crossley, all honor to his name.
Hello, I'm Greg Logue, and I will share a few brief remarks about my old friend, John Harley Fowler. I first met John Fowler in the spring of 1986 when I was practicing in Sevierville. John had recently opened a Sevierville office. John realized there were no bankruptcy lawyers in Sevierville, in Sevier County, and he rented office space in the building where I was practicing. The John Fowler I fondly remember was a competent bankruptcy professional who knew the code, the rules, and the case law. John was not flashy. John was a humble man. John did not spend his money on fancy cars, fancy clothes, or fancy houses. Instead, he invested in his family and his children. He sent both of his kids to Catholic high school, which both of his boys now realize was a sacrifice for John and his wife. John also made me laugh. John was one of those guys who could smoke, talk, and play the guitar all at the same time. He reminded me of the English comic strip character Andy Capp. John could talk with a cigarette hanging out of his lips and never miss a beat. John was also musically inclined. For some reason, in the fall of 1986, he decided that he was going to start playing the guitar. To my knowledge, he had never played the guitar or taken formal lessons up to that point in time. As I would sit in my Sevierville office, I would hear John strumming on his guitar, teaching himself new songs and new rhythms to play for me later in the day. Usually about quitting time, John would show up in the doorway of my office with that cigarette hanging from his lips, and he'd play me the newest John Fowler rendition of a song. He actually became quite good at playing the guitar. I recall seeing him on numerous occasions at the front steps of the Sevier County Courthouse playing his guitar for whoever would listen. More recently, when I would attend bankruptcy court in Knoxville, I would often find John out in the courtroom, or out in the courtyard before court would start. I would always get that same smile and the recognition of an old friend. I would always stop and chat with John for a few minutes, and he always made me feel better, made me laugh about whatever was going on in life. John was a good lawyer, a good friend, a good husband, and a good father, and will be missed by all. Thank you.
I'm Randy Reagan, and I want to tell you about my good friend, Leon Franks. Leon was my adversary, my colleague, and my very good friend. When he was prosecuting cases, he and I would go tooth and toenail during trials and hearings. Then we would meet later for beers and for courthouse gossip. First met Leon when he was a student at law school at UT. We became friends almost immediately. We worked together on a criminal defense case when he was in legal clinic, representing the man who stole the head of the Virgin Mary. I don't have enough time today to tell you the whole story, but suffice it to say, the charge against our client was dismissed, and Leon and I always enjoyed regaling people with that whole story. Leon was a caring and compassionate man. He did not leave those characteristics behind when he began working as a prosecutor. He had a strong sense of fairness and justice, tempered with mercy. He was a fierce advocate, but if he thought someone was being treated unfairly or unjustly, he would always try to do the right thing. Leon had a great sense of humor and loved telling stories. He loved country music and cowboy boots. He loved his wife, Barbara, very much and loved traveling the world with her. He loved and was proud of his kids, Cynthia and Richard, and his grandkids and great-grandkids. He was a huge Vols fan. He and I had UT football season tickets together for many years and would rarely miss a home game. After one game, as we were sitting at our tailgate party with a bunch of our other friends, there was a Florida fan walking through the park next to our tailgate. A very drunk UT fan came up and sucker punched the Florida fan. Leon ran over, grabbed the UT fan, and held him until the police arrived to make the arrest. That shows you his sense of right and wrong, that he would arrest a UT fan for punching a Florida fan. I mean, everybody hates the Gators, right? But Leon knew that that wasn't right, and he wasn't going to stand for it. That's the kind of guy he was, and we all miss him very much.
I'm honored today to speak on behalf of Judge Herschel R. Franks, who stands among the giants of our country's greatest generation. Born in West Tennessee and growing up on a farm near Pickwick Lake, his life on this earth serves as a model illustration of the American dream. Undergraduate studies at UT Martin, a GI Bill financed education at the University of College of Law after 4 years of service in the United States Air Force. 16 years as a lawyer in Chattanooga, 8 years as chancellor in Hamilton County, and of course, as we remember him, 36 years on the eastern section of the Tennessee Court of Appeals, where, in my opinion, he left his mark as one of the greatest judges of our time. Looking back on his life, Herschel would proudly contend that his time with wife, lawyer Judy, and her family, and his daughter Ramona and her precious family were his grandest productions. That said, his colleagues on the bench and bar will remember his distinguished career in the profession, and especially his enormous contribution to the development of the law. Rarely wrong and never in doubt, his legal writings displayed the qualities of all others, these two. First, his keen intellect, and second, his fierce independence. Both were demonstrated years ago when he struck down a provision in the Tennessee Constitution, an opinion our state Supreme Court chose to reverse, and later the United States Supreme Court reinstated. In his retirement year of 2014, I asked him to preside on a special panel and author the opinion. As a result of yet another constitutional challenge by John J. Hooker to the selection method for the Supreme Court. The hallmark of a great judiciary, he ruled, lay in its independence from the executive and legislative branches, free from partisan politics and beholden only to the rule of law. Judge Houston Goddard, the possessor of the greatest wit in the appellate system, often chided Herschel for his independent nature, claiming it was the result of his being an only child. Herschel gave back as good as he got. Off the bench and sometimes on, these two were the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid of the appellate system. There was never a dull moment when these dear friends held a captive audience. Stories galore from 25 years together on the bench, and so many precious memories. In 2004, Houston passed on to his greater glory, and without notes and straight from the heart, Herschel delivered the most touching eulogy I have ever witnessed. What a tribute. The only brother this only child ever had gone to cross the bar. And now they are reunited for all posterity, fussing over and properly resolving the heavenly appeals. On this earth, the benediction of Herschel R. Franks is his remarkable service to our great profession. Goodbye, our dear friend.
Hello, my name is Libba Bond, and I'm here to share brief remarks about Arline Guyton. I met Arline Guyton when I was hired for my first job as a lawyer at Hogan, Guyton, London, and Montgomery. Arline was a partner there at the time with John Hogan, Jim London, and Tucker Montgomery. Margaret Klein was also in the firm as a one-year associate. For me, it was nice to start with a firm that was 3 men and 3 women, with one of the women, Arline, being a partner. Arline was certainly a role model in that she had gone to law school probably 10 years before I did, and started her own practice, had her own clients. And so that was really nice to have that role model. Margaret and I especially enjoyed our lunches with Arline. Now, that was back in the day when lawyers went out to lunch, and Arline was certainly not one who would eat at her desk, but she was always just a delightful lunch companion and had good stories about growing up in New Orleans, her family, and interesting cases that she had dealt with. I recently spoke with Kelly Frere, Arlene's daughter, and she told me that being a lawyer was always a dream of Arlene's. And after the children got big enough in high school, junior high, I'm not sure, but she decided she was ready to go to law school, and her husband, Dr. Jimmy Guyton, who's a radiologist, was fully supportive of her doing that. And Arline did. She did receive some criticisms or some things from various people about, why was she going to law school, et cetera. But Arline just, in her way, just ignored those things. She just moved forward. She, she just showed people by her actions that she could be a lawyer. And she did. So she was certainly a role model to a lot of people. Arline later started her own firm when her son-in-law, Matt Frere, graduated. He had a law degree and then an LLM in tax. And so they started an elder law firm here in Knoxville. And then Kelly Frere, her daughter, joined the firm after she graduated law school. And it was just kind of another first for Arline. This was an area that was becoming, not many people specialized in elder law, but they did and certainly were very good at it. And I know I was always honored and pleased to refer people to Arline and her firm because I knew they would get excellent representation and they would enjoy working with her. As my partner, Dale Ambern, has said, Arline's work was detailed and precise, and you could take it to the bank. Arline was a special person and will certainly be missed. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bill Seale, and I will share brief remarks about Phil Lawson. Phil passed into the hands of his Lord on Saturday, August 29th, 2020, at his home. He was a member of Corrigan Baptist Church. Phil overcame severe hardships in his life through faith, perseverance, and hard work. Like thousands of other children in the 1940s, Phil had polio, giving him a lifelong limp, but did not let his disability control him, define him, or even slow him down. In fact, during his high school years at Greenbrier Military School, he was one of the few cadets assigned to carry fellow students from the parade ground after they fainted from extended drills. Overcoming a natural shyness, Phil received an award while at Greenbrier for public speaking. For his determination, he was known as Bulldog. After receiving his college degree in 1965 from ETSU, Phil began his career at Sesco Management Consultants. While working at Sesco, he attended UT Law School, graduating in 1975. He was admitted to the Tennessee Bar in 1976. Phil founded the Knoxville firm of Wimberly Lawson in the late 1970s, specializing in helping employers successfully navigate labor and employment law issues. Phil was thoughtful and farsighted, a great mentor to all of us in the firm. Phil gave back to the profession, serving many years as a hearing committee officer for the Board of Professional Responsibility of the Tennessee Supreme Court, and was a mediator arbitrator for the American Arbitration Association. Phil lectured and taught widely on labor and employment law matters and leadership, one of his lifelong passions. He also wrote a column called The Eagle's Nest in the Liaison, a publication of the Smoky Mountain Paralegal Association. Phil gave back to the community. He was a founding member of Knoxville Fellowship Luncheon and a member from 2008 to 2013. He always pursued and developed personal relationships with the speakers he was responsible for scheduling. What gave Phil the greatest sense of peace was his faith in God and his commitment to expressing Christ in everything he did, from caring for exotic animals on his farm to caring for disadvantaged children in third world countries. He had a loving heart. We are known by whom we love and what we leave. Phil dearly loved Neville, his wife of 44 years, his children and grandchildren. He left a legacy that includes a successful law firm and a large number of people, I among them, whose lives were changed for the better because of Phil. Thank you.
Dad liked to repeat a quote about Jesus. Who is this man Jesus? He not only says the way things are, but says the way things ought to be. When it came to suing the tobacco industry in the 1980s, Dad was saying the way things ought to be, and some people were very angry. On the first morning of jury selection in federal court in Knoxville, the Knoxville News Sentinel ran a story about Dad, a very negative story. Dad, who had 3 older brothers get drafted to fight in World War II, had signed his mom's name when Dad was 17 so that he too could go fight in the war. The last thing Dad was a draft dodger, but that was exactly what the News Sentinel was accusing Dad of, and that was exactly the impression that the jurors said they had after they read the story. So it's vindication about a decade later that Dad participated in the massive settlement against the tobacco industry, in which the tobacco industry agreed their products were harmful, addictive, and they agreed to stop marketing to children. Dad was fearless, some would say crazy. He liked to quote from the book, The Magic of Thinking Big. It's as easy to think big and about big ideas as it is to think about small ones. The law office had a rug with the number 7 that we had to walk across each morning. 7 being the number of digits in the $1 million verdict was Dad's goal for every case. Towards the end of his career, Dad helped represent the victims of the 9/11 terrorist attacks against a certain Middle Eastern nation. A crazy idea, perfect for Dad. Those judgments were not just 7 digits, but collectively closer to 12 digits. Another vindication for Dad. But the hardest case Dad had was the case that I filed against him, David Lee versus J.D. Lee, a petition to declare him incompetent. Dad, who is never good with money, had started to invest in the collection of his Jamaican lottery winnings. Dad passed at age 91, with children aged more than 50 years apart. There's so much to say about Dad, but Dad never stopped believing that his purpose was to say the way things ought to be.
My name is Jamie Daly, and I would like to share some brief remarks on behalf of the friends and colleagues of Matt Long. Matt was 37 years old and had been a practicing attorney for just 7 years. I had to recount that several times as I wrote this because it seems impossible. Matt's knowledge was boundless. Whether you'd been practicing for a year or 30 years, you could call Matt with a question and he would know the answer. I think maybe it was because if you ever saw him search a case or brief a statute or search a statute, he had the speed reader ability and he had the memory and comprehension to go along with it. And that was always annoying when just once you wanted to win an argument with him. Matt always chased adventure. He grew up racing, rock climbing, snowboarding, and he passionately loved the river. He lived his entire life on the river. In 2019, he expanded his adventures to the skies and earned his pilot's license in 2020. I don't know what would have been next for Matt, but it would have been big, it would have been fun, and it would have been successful. That's how he did everything. From the smallest accomplishment to the smallest case, he could make it big. He could make anything fun, even a practice of law. And Matt was always successful in anything he did. I've no doubt it was because of his commitment and loyalty to what he did in his life and the people in his life. When Matt graduated high school, after 13 years, he'd never missed a day of school. We were in law school and we were poor law school students, and I was in a situation where I was gonna have to move. And I was crying because I didn't even know how I would afford a couch. And without hesitation, Matt said, "We'll throw pillows on the floor and it'll be feng shui." I didn't know what that meant, but I knew it would be okay. And that was Matt. I don't know, something brought every one of us to this profession. But Matt Long was born to be an attorney. We all have those days where we come home and we rethink this decision. Matt never had that day. He loved it and he lived it. So in honor and celebration of Matt, I hope we all take a piece of that passion and carry it with us as long as we're honored to be a part of the profession that he loves so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Cliff Shirley. It's my honor and privilege to give you a brief glimpse into the life of Darryl Lowe. While being an exceptional lawyer was a major part of Darryl's world, there was an equally exceptional personal side, wonderful, loving, and spiritual side to Darryl. You see, in Darryl's world, we didn't shake hands, we hugged. We didn't text about concerns. We prayed with and for each other. And love, well, it was spelled T-I-M-E. In Darryl's world, family and love were more than descriptive and emotional words. They were calls to action. They were things you did, things you showed, things you gave. They meant being there and taking care of others. In Darryl's world, it wasn't about what you could get. It was about what you could give. So in Darryl's world, law partners became brothers, became families. And in Darryl's world, family meant everything. Relishing and coordinating so many great times, yet also always being there in the midst of the tough times. And in Darryl's world, distance, well, it was irrelevant. So if a first date meant driving all the way to Rock Hill, South Carolina to have lunch with your future bride, so be it. Or if being there to take care of your family or friends in times of need meant lengthy and extensive travel and time, well, that's just the way it was. And in Darryl's world, if a great trip with your wife or your family or friends meant extensive and even expensive travel and planning, well, he was always all in. For in Darryl's world, trips were meant to enhance relationships and create great memories, regardless of cost or distance. In Darryl's world, being a great husband, great father, and a great big D to his grandchildren meant not only extravagant, constant love, but also being there and taking care of each and all of them. So in Darryl's world, one could be brilliant, yet humble. One could be serious, yet witty and fun. Frugal, yet extremely generous. And strong, and yet gentle. It was Darryl's world, but for many of us, it was an honor and a pleasure to live in it. And while he may not be with us physically, his legacy lives on, and memories of Darryl's world are imprinted on our hearts. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ken Holbert. D. Vance Martin, known by his colleagues as Van, and I began to practice law together in 1986. In 1991, he and I joined Ron Cunningham, and in 1992, Kenny Christensen joined our firm. Ron and I still practice together. But a couple of years ago, I had the honor of speaking at the memorial service for Kenny, and now I have this honor for Van. We all leave a historical legacy that continues to live within a dimension that we call time. Knowing Van as an avid reader of history, I've elected to view Van's life from the time that I have known him. Which began in about 1986. I'll not attempt to list all the legacy points that I could make on behalf of Van, but I'm centering it around people and events which I had personal knowledge. There's a tunnel underneath Kingston Pike, which connects a garage on the north side with the church on the south side. Van was very instrumental in that project being accomplished. There's an abortion clinic at which Van was present as an advocate for the lives of the unborn. He was charged with crossing a picket line and therefore fined by the United States federal court. Additionally, Van was engaged in the issue involving pornography. He served on the Knox County Commission for pornography. That commission was one of many across the country. Jim Dobson, founder of Focus on the Family, served as the national chairman and said that was one of the worst experiences he'd ever had in his life because of the evil that's associated with pornography. Van practiced trial law in Knoxville, in Knox County, particularly in the discipline of domestic law. He and his wife also had a marriage counseling service for troubled couples, which they held at Calvary Baptist Church. Van has always been an advocate, fan of baseball. He played baseball in high school, the position of shortstop, and he attended many baseball games with family and friends over the years. He was also instrumental in the establishment and the growth of Knoxville Christian Academy. As far as his trial practice, Van was an accomplished trial lawyer, respected by judges, court personnel, and members of the bar. Yes, Van Martin left a legacy of devotion to his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, to his wife Regina, and their 4 children, and also a legacy of moral excellence in serving the community where he lived and where he practiced law. I'd like to thank the Knoxville Bar Association for this opportunity to speak on behalf of Van. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Deno Cole, and I'll share brief remarks about Dan McGehee. Dan passed away on October 29th, 2019 at age 75. He grew up in what he called God's country in Paris, Tennessee, enrolled in college at Southeast Missouri State College in 1962, transferred to the University of Tennessee, and graduated in 1964. After graduation, Dan joined the National Guard, where he rose to the rank of Sergeant First Class. From 1969 to 1971, he worked for a political consulting firm in Washington, D.C., where he ran Howard Baker's first statewide polling. Dan returned to the UT College of Law and earned his JD degree in 1974. Dan originally worked for attorney J.D. Lee. Then he founded his own law firm in 1988. He mentored many now prominent attorneys at the Market Street address. Dan maintained a general practice, primarily practicing in the areas of estate planning, probate, criminal defense, business law, and bankruptcy law, while exclusively wearing bow ties. Dan's legacy of mentorship was strongly expressed through his service to his fraternity, Pi Kappa Alpha, where he was the UT chapter advisor, earning a lifetime achievement recipient of the Order of the West Range. Dan was a passionate supporter of many local charities and the arts, serving on the boards of the Knoxville Opera Company and the Knoxville Museum of Art. He was a faithful patron of the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra and the Clarence Brown Theater. Dan was firmly committed to the value of music, and an enduring component of this legacy was the creation of the Jack Fisher McGehee and Francis Dunn McGehee Endowment for the Arts, which under the direction of the University of Tennessee Foundation serves to bring live music to middle and high school students in Paris, Tennessee, and provide student scholarships. Dan was the former president of the Optimist Club of Knoxville, active with Fish Food Pantry and a member of the choir of the Church of the Ascension. He was an avid world traveler. Dan's character is best exemplified by the fact that he gave 100% of his estate to charity.
Wendell Clark Meredith, or Clark, the captain, the boss, Superman, or many other names we all called him, passed away unexpectedly on November 6, 2020. It was a shock to all of us. He had always seemed invincible. Suddenly he was gone. When I got the call from his son Mark, I was initially very sad. But as I reflected, I knew that although Clark was only 78, he had lived a very full life. Clark was a trial lawyer's trial lawyer, and he was very proud of it. He taught me more about trying a case than I could ever imagine. There was a period of time when we would try more jury trials than we could imagine. I remember Judge Betty Scott saying, "Clark Meredith is the best trial lawyer that has ever practiced in front of me." With his tall stature and his deep voice, Clark could influence a jury as good or better than any trial lawyer that I've ever had the honor of sharing a courtroom with. He was a zealous litigator, and he was not only impressive in the courtroom, but he enjoyed tackling tough cases. I can remember one particular case where we set up a war room, as he affectionately called it, and we went through every piece of evidence that we could find, and we all came up with reasons why we couldn't win that case. Clark sat back and looked at us and said, "We will win this case." There was no real settlement offers because no one thought that we could win. As the trial went on, things seemed to be getting better, and the defense all of a sudden started wanting to talk about settling. We were all excited, but Clark looked at us and said, "Be patient. We have to wait till the man with the pinstriped Philadelphia suit comes walking in before they'll offer us any real money." Sure enough, a couple of days later, we heard the courtroom door open, turned around to see the man in the Philadelphia pinstripe suit in the courtroom. Clark looked at us with a smile on his face, and the rest is history. Clark was also a visionary. He wanted to help people that couldn't help themselves. In 1988, he came up with an idea that a private law firm could take over an overlooked child support enforcement program and could make non-paying parents pay child support for their children. He pitched his plan to the governor, and sure enough, JMFN was awarded a pilot program as the first privatized child support program in the state of Tennessee, and Clark was soon recognized nationwide as a pioneer in child support enforcement. Many of you can reflect on Clark stories and recall special memories, how he helped people. One of my favorites is the time when a tenant was not paying his rent. Clark went to go find him and collect his rent. When he approached the guy, he looked at Clark and said, "I'm sorry, I need money for my children." That's when tough old Clark pulled out a $20 bill, handed it to him, and turned around and walked off. Clark loved golfing, boating, and fishing, and he loved his family, especially his lovely wife Marie, who he affectionately called Sweetie Pie. However, his true love was the law, and he practiced for over 53 years. Until his dying day, he went to work at 30 Kentucky Avenue, and he would say, "Why would anyone ever want to retire from the practice of law?" I had the honor of practicing law with Clark for over 33 years, and I have to say the legal profession may have lost a true litigator, but it is better off because Clark Meredith was a part of it for over half of a century.
Hello, my name is Michael Winchester, and I will share brief remarks about James E. O'Connor III, known to many as Jimbo during his childhood and lifetime in Fountain City, and Jim as he expanded his career in both music and business in the Knoxville area. He graduated from Central High School, the University of Tennessee, and the UT College of Law, followed by his admission to the bar in May 1980. Jim passed away at the age of 66 on March 11, 2020 in Knoxville. Jim's skills and musical talents were recognized when he started playing piano at 4 years old by ear. This gift developed throughout his childhood and years of formal training with the loving support and encouragement of his late parents. Jim actively participated at Central High School in chorus and in their marching and concert bands. He was often the pianist at his church. Jim O'Connor would not normally be found in a courtroom or negotiating business deals on behalf of clients. Instead, his general law practice centered around buying, selling, and renting real property acquired through developments or foreclosure sales. He enjoyed renovation work on his property and dealing with homeowners and tenants to help them maintain their homes during hard times. Jim was known as a loving father and caring family member and friend. He made people feel special in both church services and social events, and enjoyed entertainment at local restaurants such as Piccolo's, Rega's, Orangery, Corner Lounge, and Club LeConte. Although not normally punctual, he always took time to enjoy the moment and the opportunity to make people feel supported and important. Jim's fondest memories included trips to his youth with his family to the beach and mountains in a travel trailer, or as an adult, kayaking on Norris Lake to watch the sunset. He was also an avid exerciser, jogging and hiking, always enjoying nature and the outdoors. These passions were passed on to daughters Sarah and Shannon and are cherished by his sister Helen Morton and other family members. Even with formal music training, he preferred to play by ear and learn favorite songs and works so that he could play them in church and at social gatherings, especially songs frequently requested by patrons and church members. His important legal and business information was written down on legal pads and meticulously kept rather than trusting it to computers or legal files. Jimbo will be remembered for his positive attitude in life rather than dwelling on negative possibilities, and his preference for a piano and a dance floor rather than a podium and a courtroom. He was a good person, man of faith, trusted friend, and will be sadly missed by all. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tyler Roper, and I've been asked to speak about Mark Orr. Mark Orr was a very loved son, fiance, and friend. He was a tall, handsome, extremely athletic man who looked like Thor, with big blue eyes, a big smile, and a larger-than-life personality. He had a sharp wit and a wicked sense of humor. It could make you laugh while slightly hurting your feelings if you were a close friend. Mark was a person everyone loved to be around. He loved to be around people. Mark was very sure of himself with unwavering confidence that was justified because he was a strong person in the courtroom and in life. I met Mark when he called me about 12 years ago out of the blue and introduced himself as a fellow lawyer and Sewanee graduate, asked me to attend a local function with him, Jonathan Dillon, and Arthur Seymour. I went for a drink and ended up hanging out with them, Arthur included, late into the night, and a friendship was born. Mark and I became fast friends after that, and his friends became my friends and vice versa. Good friends like fellow lawyers Jonathan Dillon and Sam Doak come to mind. Mark was raised in Knoxville, where he attended grade school and high school. After graduating Sewanee, Mark attended law school in Memphis before coming back here to practice, first with Johnny Dunaway in Claiborne County, and then in Knoxville on Market Street for the last 8 years of his life. He shared space with me, Keith Stewart, John Dupree, John Boucher, and Scott Sadak. We all worked together in some form or fashion over the years, and Mark was basically our law partner, a very dear friend to all of us. Mark was a true Sewanee man. He worked hard during the week and played hard on the weekends. He was a good litigator, very well organized, well dressed, articulate, always prepared for his cases in court. He commanded respect both in and out of court and did so as a gentleman, which comes from his good upbringing by his wonderful parents, his father, Robert, and his mother, Donna, who was also a lawyer. Outside of work, Mark loved to be with his friends and go to UT football games and basketball games. And he loved music and seeing bands like Widespread Panic every chance he got. Mark enjoyed people and life. Mark had friends everywhere and from all walks of life, and he treated everyone with respect and could make people laugh and have fun. It was always more fun with Mark Orr around. In the years that Mark and I spent in the same law office, we would often try out our arguments on each other and rack each other's brains to develop our legal theories and make sure we understood the law. As my contracts professor taught me at UT, we learned more from the guy next to us than the book in front of us, and Mark was that guy. Mark was always quick to help anyone, lawyers and lay people alike, when they needed a hand. He always helped his friends when they needed them. More than once did Mark have a friend living in his spare bedroom while going through a divorce and when they fell in hard times, just because that's the kind of person Mark was, a true friend. I still have the last text from Mark on my phone. He texted me right after he asked his fiancee, Courtney Ramsey, a wonderful woman, to marry him. He was very happy and proud at that moment in his life. A couple of months later, and a couple of days before he died, he showed up at my office to visit. He was looking very professional and lawyerly in his Brooks Brothers suit on his way back from a successful day in court. He talked about how great things were going in his practice and in his life, and his big wedding coming up in a couple of months. He was the happiest I'd seen him. He had life by the tail. Mark died way too young, and after his short 40 years on this earth, he left a legacy of happiness and nothing but good memories of him behind as an incredible lawyer, son, fiance, and friend. He is sorely missed. Godspeed, my friend.
I'm Sarah Sheppeard, here to say a few words about Pamela Reeves, Chief Judge of the Federal District Court for the Eastern District of Tennessee. She lost her battle with cancer on September 10, 2020. She was the Chief Judge, but outside of the courtroom, she preferred that most of us call her Pam, so I will take the liberty of doing that today. So many of you knew her. It's hard for me to tell you anything that you didn't already know, but let me give it a shot. There's young Pam Reeves, and even as a young girl, she had that electric smile and those same twinkling blue eyes. Many of you know she came from very modest circumstances and was the oldest of 5 sisters. There they are. We have Rhonda, Sandra D, Loretta, Pam, and Angela. And yes, if you look closely, you'll see that our Chief Judge was sporting a rhinestone tiara. Pam had a marvelous sense of humor and a delightful, mischievous side. Young Pam Reeves left the hills of Virginia to attend the University of Tennessee, both undergraduate and law school, planning to take the world by storm, and she did. She excelled in academics, she excelled in leadership activities, and also at connecting with people. And her law school class was an especially close class. But no one was closer to Pam than her former classmate, Charles Swansea. They married in 1988 and had wonderful, wonderful years together. They're the parents of 2 children, Reedy and Amanda. Here you see them as young children. A number of you know these delightful young people. There they are, a little bit older, with their father watching their mother be sworn in as a judge. Not surprisingly, Reedy and Amanda followed their parents in their parents' footsteps and chose a legal career. Both graduated from UVA Law School. Reedy's practicing in DC, and Amanda recently passed the Virginia bar. Time doesn't permit me to discuss all the glass ceilings that Pam broke in her career, but perhaps her greatest accomplishment was her ability to connect and build relationships with people. Friends invariably describe Pam as a people person. If Pam asked you, "How are you?" it wasn't a throwaway line. She wanted to know, and she would keep asking questions until she found out, both to friends and even to strangers. Not only was she a wife, a mother, a sister, a mentor, and a good friend, she was also generous, humble, incredibly hardworking, and kind. She loved the beauty in nature, the inner beauty of people, and the ever-changing adventure of life, which she lived to the fullest. Dr. Seuss had a quote, "Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened." And we're smiling for you, Pam.
Hello, I'm Judge Jerome Melson of the Knox County Circuit Court, and I wish to make some remarks about my friend, Harold Wimberly. Many years ago, I found myself in Las Vegas for the very first time. I was accompanying Judge Wimberly, and he made a few days memorable. Perhaps the highlight was what he called the Las Vegas Heart of Darkness tour. Among the stops, a trip to the downtown bus station and adjacent casino, the worst free show in town, listening to a concert by a group called the Sunspots, a meeting with a Golden Nugget cocktail waitress, 47 years on the job, and a $1.99 breakfast buffet at a low-budget casino frequented by Cousin Eddie of National Lampoon's Vegas Vacation. There, I was gifted with a ceramic ashtray with the words "Earl's Butts" inscribed on the base. I laughed much during those few days, enjoying the judge's mischievous humor and his fondness for the absurd. His intelligence was also much in evidence as he expounded upon the history of the region and its settlers. On another trip, the judge insisted that I accompany him to Utah, where he excitedly shared the wonders of Zion National Park and Bryce Canyon with me. With his camera gear in tow, he urged my ascent to a cliff top called Angel's Landing, where he took this photo. In silence, we stood there several moments and gazed at the splendor and majesty that enfolded us. The cobalt sky, the silver filament of the Virgin River far below, and the ageless vermilion vaulting all around. I remember the judge frozen in that moment, alive, joyful, awestruck, reverent. Toward the end of that trip, in a place called Kolob Canyon, I have another memory of the two of us pausing in the trees that frame the surrounding red cliffs, reaching skyward and toward which we gazed. There were no words exchanged. We were then simply two men feeling small and alive, and dare I say it, bathed in grace. His humor, his passion for capturing beautiful landscapes in sublime light, his intelligence which illuminated his conversation and informed his service as a judge, were gifts rightly to be remembered and honored by all who had the good fortune to know him. Thank you.